Welcome to Zero Gravity's podcast. Today we're going to be talking all about decentralized AI and some of the components of building these AI systems, namely the importance of nodes. So we have my good friend Michael here, one of the founders of Zero G, to discuss this. Michael, could you give us a brief overview of Zero G and the vision behind creating the decentralized AI operating system and what that all means to the audience?
Absolutely. And just for context, there's two entities. So one is the Zero Gravity Labs entity that's responsible for developing the technology. And then there's the Zero G Foundation, where I'm an advisor and where the node sale would be run from, which is responsible really for the improvement and the growth of the ecosystem. And so the vision behind Zero G as a whole is to create this a decentralized AI operating system. And the way we thought about it was that there's this whole notion of closed or centralized AI. And in centralized AI, you have this perception or this kind of path where companies spend billions of dollars training these models, but they're essentially black box processes. You can't really independently verify, you can't really trust, you have to trust this particular company like OpenAI that they're going to do whatever is best for humanity's needs going forward. But really you have no insight, like where did the data come from, how was it labeled, who made the censorship decisions, how was the model trained, what were the weights and biases. Nobody can verify that. So it's completely closed. And then on the other hand, decentralized AI is transparent. It has provenance. You know where the data came from, who labeled it, who cleaned it, how it was trained, what the weights and models biases are, what version of the model you're being served. That the inference itself is verifiable, so that it came from this particular GPU and it came from this particular model. You can verify all of that. You can then also introduce things like economic incentives and disincentives, so that if a model or agent is misbehaving, that you can then punish or incentivize different type of behavior. And so everything's fully transparent. And the key vision there is that we fundamentally are worried that we could go into a world where centralized AI companies don't align models correctly, and then all of a sudden you have a bunch of humanoid robots running around with agents that decide one day that humans are not necessary for their functioning or for their reward system. And so we want to avoid that by having a decentralized AI operating system where human needs and human values and safety and kind of human prosperity is like just written into the code of how AI models and agents behave. One kind of famous video I've seen of Elon Musk talking about this is he asked, I believe it was ChatGPT, like what's more important or what's scarier, like nuclear war or the misgendering of Kylie Jenner? And you can guess what the answer was. It was the misgendering piece. And so nuclear war would not be great for our survival. And so we want to make sure that we have agents that can make better decisions that are for human benefit, for human abundance, and not for human destruction. And so that's really the vision around why we created it and why we see AI needing to be a public good.
Yeah, and let's talk a little bit about like where nodes come into play, because most people are probably familiar with like, hey, I type into ChatGPT my question, but they don't necessarily know like the underpinnings of it. So talk to us a little bit about like why we even need these nodes and what kind of purpose they serve in this decentralized operating system.
Yeah, so kind of closed AI or centralized AI is very different. You send a request to OpenAI. It basically sends a request to their data centers. The models essentially run in those data centers. They use a bunch of GPU compute to then basically come up with some inference result for you. So completely centralized, completely black box. You have no idea where the data center is, what's being served, how the model was trained. And then in the decentralized AI setting, everything's essentially transparent, and so and it's distributed. So there's not a single data center that's hosting it. So you have multiple nodes across the network that are doing different types of functions. And those functions can range from I'm a storage node, I'm just holding data, to I'm a data availability node, I'm actually guaranteeing this data availability property, to I'm a validator node, to making sure that the consensus is actually functioning properly, to then one of the reasons why we're doing the node sale is we also want to have this concept of an AI alignment node. And initially, this node, what it will do is just basically check if the DA nodes and the storage nodes are behaving properly. And if they're not, then there's essentially some type of alert and potentially some kind of penalty or additional action that gets taken. Over time, we actually want them to be part of a smart kind of system design. So let's say it'll take probably 6 to 12 months to figure out this additional utility where they can then also think, or not think, but they can then also do additional functionality like is this model misbehaving? Is this agent misbehaving? Is there model drift that's happening? So we need to kind of carefully design and see what types of things we can check for so that they become actual alignment nodes for the models and the agents themselves.
Yeah, let's go deeper into the different types of nodes. So it seemed like, Zero G Foundation decided to do the node sale to, better, decentralize the system. And talk to us a little bit, because you mentioned a few different kinds of nodes. Is the only node being sold the AI alignment node, or what kind of node is included in the sale?
That's correct. Yeah, it's only the AI alignment node. And so there's up to 170,000 plus AI alignment nodes that are available. The validator nodes, the DA nodes, the storage nodes are fully permissionless. So anybody can essentially run one on the network. There's actually multiple types of storage nodes as well. There's like a standard, there's a turbo, there's a key value store, but let's not worry too much about the individual differences.
Sure.
But yeah, the core part of the node sale it's effectively a decentralization mechanism. We want to encourage essentially ownership on the network, ownership of the key infrastructure, and that's in the form of running or essentially buying a license for a piece of software and then running that piece of software. And you can either do it by yourself, or you can work together with a one-click node provider that then runs it on your behalf. So that's those are the core components.
Yeah. So how does that work? Because let's imagine people aren't super familiar with running their own nodes. They join the sale and they get an AI alignment node. Is this something they're like, hey, I gotta spin up a GCP instance? Or you mentioned there's a one-click node provider. Talk to us a little bit about like the different ways. Like, let's say after they get the node, how can they deploy it?
Yeah, it depends on how technical the end user is, and if they have their own hardware, if they want to use a cloud provider. There's really different ways of interacting with it. So generally, you purchase the right to own this piece of software that you can run on the network. Then, before you get to claim essentially the NFT that comes with it, you have to do some, KYC, AML essentially. After that, once you have the right, then you basically have to figure out a way how to run that piece of software. So if you have a home setup and it should be really lightweight, I think it'll require, from what I remember, about one CPU and very minimal memory and RAM. So really any laptop, any home PC should be able to handle nodes. And then it just depends on how many nodes you have. Then you can basically calculate the requirements for that. So then you essentially get a script that you run on that hardware. So that's if you wanted to do it yourself. If you're doing it in the cloud, then of course you log in through a terminal, you do some SSH, and then run the script on on those machines in the cloud. Now, if you use a one-click node provider, then essentially you're just assigning the kind of NFTs or the running of that piece of software to those one-click node deployers, and that's really the easiest option. So if you're not technical at all, then that's the best and easiest option to run.
Truthfully, I'll probably be on the one-click node provider myself, but everyone choose your own journey there. So with the upcoming Foundations node sale, could you talk to us a little bit about like how this node contributes to scaling decentralized AI? Because you talked about, hey, the goal of each one of these nodes is to align the AI with our best interests. Talk to us about like how the node itself does that and why it's important to have like multiple. Some people might be like, well, why can't we just have like 4 nodes?
Well, if you just have 4 nodes, then you have to trust those 4 nodes to do the right job. What if one becomes adversarial, or 2 or 3 or 4? So that's why this idea of sufficient decentralization is quite important. And so generally, you want to have at least 100 nodes to at least have a kind of feel of being sufficiently decentralized. But the more nodes, the better in general. Um, but there is at some point also performance trade-offs, and so that's why there's kind of a magic number in 100,000 plus nodes, if you will. And because they're very lightweight nodes, they have this functionality of initially just checking, is the storage node, is the DA node kind of behaving appropriately? Are there any kind of adversarial attacks that are happening? Is there a data withholding problem? Like, are people basically just saying, I'm going to store your data, but I will never return it back to you? And so that would be a misbehaving storage node, for example. And so this alignment node can essentially detect this and provide this useful utility. And then eventually, as I mentioned, we'll have additional functionality, but there's still a lot of design and actually fundamental research that needs to be done before we can implement that functionality.
Makes sense. And talk to us a little bit about like how this node sale takes place. Is this something like, hey, the VCs just get to immediately buy up all the nodes, or is this like a very fair launch? Talk to us a little bit about the launch itself.
The idea is for it to be a fair launch. I mean, we've essentially done kind of our VC fundraise, if you will, and we have a specific cap table from that. But then the funny thing to me is that when you look at token allocations, you've got half to the community, but then by the time they enter and become owners of the system, it's already at a point when valuations have ballooned and you're kind of on a public exchange. So why shouldn't the ownership perspective mirror that of kind of the private VC perspective as well? So the node sale is really designed for the broader community. People that have contributed in our Discord, people that have contributed on X, people that have kind of helped us with making the mascot, for example, helped us think through how to improve our RPC node infrastructure. Like, we want to reward our community, and we want to do that by making this a very fair node sale, and to have it be done across essentially 32 tiers, with the earliest tiers kind of providing the most rewards, if you will. And so we want to do it in such a fair way that you're able to enter at tiers even kind of below where VCs have entered. So it's very fair to the overall community as well.
And given that people are running their nodes, and there's some kind of cost associated with one, like purchasing the node, and two, running the node. Is there any kind of like incentive mechanisms, or are people just doing this because they love AI alignment? Talk to us. Is there some kind of reward for running these nodes?
Yeah, there's essentially a 36-month linear unlock, if you will. And so as long as you're providing utility to the network, you're then getting rewarded in terms of tokens. So it's just like any other software license. You're doing some useful work on the network, and you're getting a reward as a result. So that's generally how it works. And then in the future, we also want to make sure that our node holders can reap additional rewards for their contributions. So we're looking into that too. And if you're participating in the sale, and for example, you're really excited about the zero-G network, you're bringing it to your friends, then we'll also have kind of discount codes and referral codes and those types of things as well.
Absolutely. You talked about some of the benefits that will accrue to the node operators. Talk to us a little bit about like the long-term vision for node operators. Is there a goal to continue to increase the amount of nodes, or like what's their role in building this AI operating system?
And is this from the perspective of the alignment node or different types of nodes?
For the alignment node, the people participating in the node sale.
Yeah, the idea is that it becomes fully useful functionality over time once we've incorporated this alignment functionality. Even once the, let's say, reward string after 36 months runs out, it should have useful utility in the network in such a way that you can still check our models misbehaving or the agents misbehaving. So it should just become part of the overall network utility at that point, and then we can switch it to more of a permissionless type setup. So the goal is definitely for this to have a lot of really useful utility.
And for those that want to participate in the notes, what's kind of the best way to do it? Do they have to, look at an email list? Is there a Discord they should be joining?
Yeah, so we will, the different tiers will depend on how early you were to the Zero-G community. And so we want to reward, of course, our most loyal contributors first. And then we've partnered with a number of different launch pads that contribute to different types of community or that are part of different types of communities to make sure that they can be part of the network. So again, very much a decentralization ethos as part of it. And so there's a pre-sale component to it, and then there's also the public sale component to it. For the public sale, the easiest thing is either join one of the launch pads or go directly to our website. And I think we'll host it at nodes.zerog.ai. But we may need to edit it because I think there is a different website for it.
Oh, good. If you want to find it live, we can do that as well, or we can just put it in at the end.
Yeah, maybe we just say and go to our hosted domain for the node sale, and yeah, you can just add the link towards the end.
Yeah, and if people want to learn more, they can always go to the hosted domain for the node sale. We'll be putting that in the description. So now that we've talked a little bit about like the importance of nodes, I know that when Zero-G started, and maybe people are just finding us now, that you guys were focused on data availability. Talk to us a little bit about like where you see, because you guys are building the decentralized AI operating system, where you see this fitting in the Web3 and AI ecosystem.
Yeah, in order to make AI a fully on-chain phenomena, we had to build different parts of the stack, essentially. And we wanted to do it in a kind of modular way so that you can use different parts of the stack independently or together, depending on your use cases. So we started out on the storage side because when we asked most AI projects, like, where are you hosting your models? Where are you hosting your data? And the general response was, well, in cloud providers. And we said, well, that's not very censorship resistant. So shouldn't there be decentralized storage that is censorship resistant, that's fault tolerant, where you also have provenance and you can fully track how a piece of data kind of moved from one step to the next step. And so we started at that layer because we saw there was a lot of companies already building the compute piece, and we just wanted to partner with them. And then once we realized, okay, we have that solved, now we can use that component to build what's known as data availability. And data availability is one of the key essential layers of a blockchain that enables significantly faster throughputs and also significantly lower costs, because something like 80-90% of the costs of a blockchain really are attributed to that particular layer. And it stems from the issue that if you have a distributed or decentralized system, somebody does an execution, somebody proposes a block gets formed, other people want to verify that that block was actually done in accordance with the smart contract rules and regulations or other kind of methodologies, so that it's essentially a fully formed block and there's no issues with the network. And so that data availability ensures that the block is available so other people can verify. Once it's verified, then essentially the whole thing settles. And so if you speed up data availability, then you also speed up the ability to build different types of applications. And those applications now are confined to things that can't be fully on-chain. So for example, you can't build on-chain gaming applications that scale to millions of users simultaneously right now on Ethereum, for example, or even on layer 2s. And in order to enable that, we need a DA layer that has significantly higher throughput. So for example, if you wanted to build something like Fortnite for tens of millions of users, you're dealing with gigabytes per second in data throughput requirements. No DA layer today is able to offer that. And so that's where we really came into the picture. And so that's why we said the DA layer is such an important component. We need to build that, especially for extreme use cases of AI where you're dealing with tens, if not hundreds of gigabytes per second for things like model training, for example. Once we build that, now we can get more into the execution layer, kind of how I described this idea of the serving layer. We're calling it the serving layer. And so we want to really be the connective tissue between Web3 and AI, where we can have different providers like inference providers, fine-tuning providers, even CDN type of providers to just be on that serving framework. So it's a really smooth, easy user experience. You don't have to go to like 30 different providers to actually figure out what the solution is that you need to build. If you want to build a very simple decentralized inference application today, you have to go through 5 or 6 different providers to figure this out. You have the storage, you've got the DA, you've got the layer that you want to build on. You have to pick the execution stack, and so we just want to make it super simple.
Absolutely. So let's say we hit the fast forward button 5 years. Where do you envision zero G decentralized AI operating system, and how do you see it fitting in? Do we think we're just going to have a bunch of AI agents running around? We've got our alignment nodes to make sure they're not acting too naughty. Like, tell us a little bit about what you see the vision.
Yeah, I think the key milestone is going to be getting to parity with centralized systems around what can be built, what can be trained, what level of inference we can support. So once we get to that, I think that's already a pretty big milestone. It's maybe 2-3 years away. There's a lot of fundamental research that needs to be done. So we're going to be spending a good amount of time on doing research on decentralized compute, on decentralized alignment. And so once we then hit that milestone, then what's next? Like, can we affect AGI, for example, in a faster way? So artificial general intelligence. With a centralized system, are there ways where we can think about training differently so that we can reach AGI faster? So the current paradigm is throw more compute at it. Bigger parameters, bigger models, more compute should get us to AGI. Well, what if it doesn't? What if we need to take a different approach and say, there was recently a paper called Mixture of Million Experts. And so people are starting to think, what if it's not just one large model? What if it's like hundreds, if not millions of smaller models put together that then get us to AGI? Because then you have these like small experts that can actually guide us onto that path. And so that would be really interesting. Can we get to AGI faster? Or are there things that are fundamentally only able to be done in a decentralized environment? So that could include having latent compute that actually can train even larger models that you could train in a decentralized data center. So we'll have to see. So milestone 1, get to parity, and then milestone 2 is, can we outshine in different ways?
Do you have an opinion on that? Do you think the bespoke model solution will be the one that wins out, or you're totally agnostic and you're like, well, I guess we'll see if it's bigger or better models, or it's like highly bespoke models working together?
My hunch is, it's hard to tell at the moment. My hunch is that the way the human brain works is that there's many specialized kind of elements to the human brain. So you've got a motor cortex, for example, that only deals with athletic abilities, and there's like different mappings to your hands and to your feet and how they interact with space. You've got a cerebellum, which is like your perception of time, and then your hypothalamus, which is much more focused on kind of regulating your hormonal system. And so there's many different parts that all play a specific role. So I would imagine it'll be much more of a larger kind of lots of small models together that then make up kind of AGI. So just based on how the human body works, I would expect that.
Yeah, that'd be my hunch as well. Now, talk to them a little bit about where they can learn more about zero gravity. Obviously, the website zerog.ai, and then where can they find out more about the node cell? We'll put obviously all of the links in the description. Is there anywhere they should go, like the Discord community or just the website?
Yeah, the website will have a ton of information. There'll be a good FAQ as well. And then, definitely can ask on the Discord as well, any questions that potentially arise. And we can support on those as well.
Absolutely. Well, everyone go get involved with Zero G Online. Go to the website, go find out more about the node sale, and see if running an AI alignment node fits for you. And let's continue building the future of Web3.